My name is Lorraine Whitmore, and I buried my husband of 45 years last Tuesday. As I stood among the flowers and folded programs at the reception following his funeral, I never imagined that the deepest wound of that day wouldn't come from grief, but from betrayal. It wasn't the farewell that broke me. It was the words I overheard when I thought I was alone. I had slipped into a side room at the funeral home, needing just a few minutes to breathe. My eyes were still swollen from crying, my hands still trembling from letting go of Henry, my partner, my anchor. The door opened quietly, and I instinctively leaned back into the shadows behind a tall vase of lilies. I didn't expect to be seen, and I wasn't. But I heard everything. "We need to move this along," a voice hissed in low Spanish. "Speed up the inheritance. I'm putting the old lady in a nursing home." That was Vanessa, my daughter-in-law. And the old lady, that was me. My son Daniel's voice followed, quieter. "Vanessa, please, not today. She's already fading. She won't fight it." I sat frozen. My husband hadn't even been gone a full week, and already they were planning my exit. They had no idea Henry had told me something before he passed. He had looked me in the eye and said, "Lorraine, I've taken care of everything." At the time I thought he meant the funeral. Now, I wasn't so sure. The funeral had been beautiful, if you can use such a word for something so filled with sorrow. St. Andrew's Chapel was full. Henry had been a high school principal for over 30 years, and he left behind a legacy of kindness, structure, and calm authority. Colleagues, former students, friends, and neighbors came to pay their respects. I stood with my back straight, dressed in navy blue, Henry's favorite color, on me. My hand was locked tightly in Daniel's, our only son. Vanessa, his wife, played her part perfectly. She wore a sleek black dress, her hair pinned up, her face composed with just the right touch of grief. She accepted condolences with a polite nod, a hollow expression that fooled most but not me. There was something behind her eyes, something calculating. When it was finally over and guests had filtered into the adjoining reception room for coffee and cake, the weight of everything pressed down on me. I felt like I was drowning in polite smiles and whispered prayers. I didn't say a word to anyone as I slipped away to that quiet side room. I just wanted 5 minutes. 5 minutes alone with my sorrow. But what I got instead was a revelation I couldn't unhear. They were planning my removal. Not gently, not with concern, with impatience. It wasn't even about my well-being. It was about money, the house, the inheritance. They saw me not as someone grieving the loss of a lifelong partner, but as a hurdle, an inconvenience, a woman in the way. And yet, I remembered Henry's words. "I've taken care of everything." He'd said it so quietly, squeezing my hand. I thought he meant the paperwork. But now I wondered, had he known? Had he seen this coming? That night, the house felt different. It was the same two-story colonial Henry and I had lived in for almost 3 decades. We'd raised Daniel here, painted the walls ourselves, planted the magnolia tree in the front yard. We'd hosted Thanksgiving dinners, neighborhood barbecues, and quiet anniversaries with just the two of us and a bottle of wine. Now, it echoed. Every corner whispered of absence. I wandered from room to room, still dressed in my funeral clothes. I ran my fingers along the back of Henry's favorite chair. His cardigan still hung by the door. His reading glasses sat on the nightstand. His half-finished crossword puzzle lay untouched on the coffee table. A pen balanced carefully on the last word he never got to fill in. I didn't move a single thing. I couldn't. I found myself back in our bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed. The silence was heavy, but my mind was loud. Vanessa's words looped in my head. Speed up the inheritance. She was already thinking about selling the house. Already talking about shipping me off like old furniture. Not even a full week had passed. And then, there was Henry, his voice, his eyes when he told me not to worry. He knew something. I was sure of it now. We had talked about finances near the end. In one of his more lucid moments, Henry had held my hand and said, "Lorraine, listen to me. I've taken care of everything. You'll be safe. Just trust me." At the time, I'd nodded, too wrapped in grief to question what he meant. But now, with my son and his wife circling like vultures, it felt less like comfort, and more like a warning. A quiet shield he'd left behind, one I hadn't yet seen, but needed to find. The next morning, the doorbell rang just after 10. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, there was Vanessa, immaculate as always, holding a casserole dish with a too bright smile. "Morning, Lorraine," she said sweetly. "I brought you some chicken pot pie. I know how hard it is to cook for just one." I forced a polite smile. "That's very thoughtful of you. Come in." She swept past me into the kitchen as if it were her own. I watched her set the dish down and immediately begin opening cabinets. "Let me help you organize a bit," she said, peering into the spice cupboard. "This kitchen is just so." She paused, searching for a word that wouldn't offend. "Cluttered." That cupboard was Henry's gift to me for our 30th anniversary. He had built it himself, each shelf carefully measured to fit beside the stove. I still remembered how proud he was when he saw me arranging my herbs. "I've managed just fine with this kitchen for 30 years, I said, sharper than I meant to. Vanessa blinked, startled for a moment, before slipping her polite expression back into place. "Of course you have. I just thought, now that you're alone, things might be harder." Now that I'm alone. Now that I'm weak. That was the message, wrapped in faux kindness. She pulled a glossy brochure from her purse. "Daniel and I have been talking. There's a lovely senior community just 20 minutes away. Private apartments, medical staff, meals provided." "I'm not ready to leave my home, Vanessa," I said evenly. "No one's saying right this minute," she said, backpedaling quickly. "It's just good to plan ahead." But I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't planning for my comfort. She was planning for control. And I wasn't going to hand it to her. As soon as Vanessa left, I went straight to the telephone. There was only one person I trusted to give me the clarity I needed: Dr. Miles, our family physician for over 20 years. He'd seen me through colds, surgeries, and watched Henry's decline with the quiet dignity only an old friend could offer. He picked up on the second ring. "Lorraine," he said, his voice warm, "how are you holding up?" "I'm managing," I replied honestly. "But I'm calling about something specific. Did Henry ever talk to you about me? About what he wanted for me after he was gone?" There was a pause on the line. "Yes," Dr. Miles said gently, "he did." I sat down slowly, heart pounding. "He asked me to assess your ability to live independently," the doctor continued. "He was worried that there might be pressure from others to move you out of your home before it was necessary." My throat tightened. "And what did you find?" "That there's no reason for concern," he replied firmly. "You're in excellent health for your age, Lorraine. No cognitive issues, no mobility concerns. There is no medical justification for relocating you. Not now." I exhaled, the first full breath I'd taken all morning. "Would you be willing to put that in writing?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Henry asked me to prepare such a letter, just in case. I have it ready," he said. Even in his final weeks, Henry had been protecting me, anticipating what might come, making sure I had the tools I'd need when he no longer could stand beside me. "I'll have it delivered this afternoon," Dr. Miles promised. When I hung up the phone, I looked out the kitchen window at the garden Henry and I built together. Let them try. I wasn't standing alone. The next morning, I saw Vanessa's sub pull into the driveway again. But this time, she wasn't alone. Daniel stepped out from the passenger side, holding a folder under his arm, both of them wearing carefully curated smiles that instantly put me on alert. They were ready for battle. What they didn't know was I was too. I had brewed coffee in advance and welcomed them in with a calmness that surprised even me. "Mom," Daniel began, settling into Henry's old recliner, "we wanted to talk to you about some practical matters." "Of course," I said, pouring coffee for all of us. "I've been thinking about practical matters too." Vanessa perched at the edge of the couch, legs crossed, brochure in hand. "There's a wonderful community we've looked into," she began. "They have a waiting list, so it's smart to get in early." Before she could say more, I raised a hand gently. "Actually, I've invited someone to join us for this conversation." Vanessa's brow furrowed. "Who?" As if on cue, the doorbell rang. I opened it to reveal Sandra Blake, Henry's former home nurse. In her 50s, sharp-eyed and kind, she'd cared for Henry in his final months. She was also the only other person who had seen how little help Vanessa had offered during that time. "Sandra's here to offer some professional input," I said as we all sat down again. "She knows my health better than anyone besides Dr. Miles." Vanessa shifted in her seat. "Daniel, Vanessa," I began, "I appreciate your concern, but I've spoken to Dr. Miles, who provided written confirmation that I am medically fit to live independently." I handed Daniel the letter. His eyes widened as he read it. Vanessa said nothing, but her jaw tightened. For the first time, she realized I wasn't going quietly. Just as the room fell into a tense silence, the front door opened again. "Grandma?" a voice called. It was Lily, my granddaughter, Daniel and Vanessa's daughter, backpack slung over one shoulder, her long dark braid draped over her hoodie. She stepped into the living room and paused, eyes bouncing between the three of us. "Oh, am I interrupting something?" "Not at all, sweetheart," I said, my voice steady. "We're just having a family conversation." Lily walked in cautiously, sensing the mood. "What kind of conversation?" Daniel glanced at Vanessa, who avoided his eyes. "We're discussing Grandma's living situation," he said. Lily's brow creased. "What about it?" "Your mother thinks I'd be better off in a senior living facility," I said gently. "What?" she nearly shouted. "That's ridiculous. Grandma, you literally taught me how to make homemade lasagna from scratch last weekend." Vanessa's voice tightened. "Lily, adult decisions are more complex than you realize." "I'm not a child, Mom," Lily shot back. "And Grandma isn't some helpless old woman." My heart swelled. Lily had been visiting more often since Henry passed. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we sat in silence. But she always showed up with respect, curiosity, and care. Sandra, sensing the tension, said, "Lily, would you help me bring in some cookies from the kitchen?" As they left the room, Daniel leaned forward. "Mom, I just want what's best for you." "I know you do," I said, reaching for his hand. "But what's best for me is staying here, in my home, with the supports already in place. Henry and I discussed this before he passed. We were clear." He nodded slowly, caught between two worlds. I looked toward the kitchen where Lily was laughing with Sandra, and I realized I wasn't fighting this alone anymore. The offices of Halpern Associates hadn't changed in years. Same burgundy carpet, same landscape paintings, same receptionist with her gentle voice and silver-streaked hair. But this time I wasn't here with Henry holding my hand. I was here alone with Vanessa checking her watch every minute and Daniel nervously flipping through a magazine he clearly wasn't reading. "How long is this going to take?" Vanessa muttered under her breath. Daniel whispered, glancing at me. The door opened. "Mrs. Whitmore, Daniel, Vanessa, Mr. Halpern is ready for you." We followed the lawyer into his office and took our seats around a large conference table. Mr. Halpern, dignified in his gray suit, gave me a warm, familiar nod. "First, allow me to say how sorry I am for your loss, Lorraine. Henry was not just a client, but a friend." "Thank you," I said quietly. He opened the folder before him. Henry's will is fairly straightforward. Lorraine, as his surviving spouse, you inherit the home at 71 Willow Grove Lane and all of its contents. The joint bank accounts, of course, are already in your name. There is also a life insurance policy naming you as the sole beneficiary. Vanessa shifted in her seat. "There is also a retirement account," Mr. Halpern continued, "valued at approximately $450,000. Lorraine remains the primary beneficiary." Daniel nodded, unsurprised. Then Mr. Halpern paused, turning the page. "However, there is a clause Henry added 3 months before his passing specifically regarding the house." I sat up straighter. "In the event that Lorraine is pressured, coerced, or removed from her home against her will, and without written recommendations from 2 independent medical professionals stating she is no longer capable of living alone, the house will not transfer to Daniel. Instead, it will be sold and the proceeds donated to the Alzheimer's Research Foundation, in honor of Henry's mother." The room fell into stunned silence. I could feel Vanessa's shock radiating across the table. She gripped her armrest tightly. "This is absurd," she whispered. Mr. Halpern didn't flinch. These were Henry's wishes. And we recorded the signing. He was of sound mind. Henry had seen it coming, and he'd made sure I was protected. Mr. Halpern reached into the folder and pulled out 2 sealed envelopes. "One more thing," he said, his voice softer now. "Henry left personal letters, one for you, Lorraine, and one for Daniel." He handed mine over. My name was written in Henry's familiar, looping handwriting. I clutched it gently, holding my breath. "And for me?" Vanessa asked, her voice tight. Mr. Halpern shook his head. "I'm afraid there was no letter addressed to you." Her lips pressed into a thin, bitter line. I tucked the envelope into my purse without opening it. I wanted to read it alone.
Outside, as we stepped into the parking lot, Vanessa turned to Daniel sharply. He targeted me. That clause, he did it to spite me. Daniel didn't answer. He looked lost, conflicted. I didn't wait for more. I'll be heading home. Lily's coming over later to help me sort Henry's things. I can drive you, Daniel offered automatically. That's all right, I said, giving him a tight smile. I drove myself. I still can. I meant it as a simple fact, but Vanessa flinched like it was a jab. Back at home, I made a cup of chamomile tea and sat on our bed, surrounded by the scent of Henry's aftershave and the faint creak of old floorboards. Then I opened the envelope. My darling Lorraine. If you're reading this, I'm gone and they've already started circling. I know how Vanessa speaks when she thinks no one is listening. I've done all I could to protect you. We may bend, but we don't break. You are stronger than you know. All my love, now and always. Henry. I pressed the letter to my chest, tears spilling freely, but they weren't tears of fear anymore. They were tears of strength. 2 days later, the storm finally came. Vanessa showed up unannounced, her tone clipped and eyes sharp. Lorraine, we need to talk about the will. I thought we agreed to give it time, I said calmly, standing at the kitchen counter. Well, I can't sit back while my family's future is sabotaged by one clause. I turned to face her. It wasn't sabotage, it was protection. For what? She snapped. From me, from your own family? I stayed quiet. The silence spoke louder. She began pacing. Do you know how much that house is worth right now? Daniel and I are trying to plan for Lily's college, our retirement. And I am trying to live in peace, I interrupted, in the house I shared with my husband for over 30 years. Vanessa stopped pacing. This is selfish, Lorraine. You're using your grief as a shield. My voice dropped, firm but measured. No, I'm using my boundaries as one. Just then, the front door creaked open. Daniel stepped in, a paper bag of groceries in hand. He looked between us. What's going on? I opened my mouth, but before I could answer, Lily's voice came from the staircase. They're arguing about forcing Grandma into a nursing home so they can sell the house. Daniel's face went pale. Vanessa, is that true? She faltered. I was just exploring options. Behind my back. He set the groceries down, the weight of the moment sinking in. I stepped in gently. We need honesty, not whispers. No more hallway conversations. No more real estate phone calls when you think I'm not listening. Lily came down and stood beside me. I'm staying here with Grandma, she said, and if you keep pushing this, you're going to lose more than a house. For once, Vanessa had no words. The power had shifted, and we all knew it. The weeks that followed felt different, lighter. The home modifications were completed without disrupting the heart of the house. Handrails in the hallway, a medical alert pendant I actually didn't mind wearing, and a laundry area moved to the first floor. It was still my home, just a bit more prepared for the years ahead. Lily officially moved into the spare bedroom the day after high school graduation. She brought laughter and loud music and textbooks that spilled across the dining table. In the quiet evenings, we'd sit out back on the porch Henry built, watching fireflies blink over the garden he'd planted. Daniel began visiting more often without Vanessa. He'd help trim the hedges, fix loose doorknobs, and sit with me long after the sun had gone down. One evening, he finally spoke what had been resting on his face for weeks. Dad's letter, it made me think, he said quietly, about who I've been, about how easily I let someone else speak over you. I reached for his hand, no blame in my eyes, just love. You still have time to speak for yourself, Daniel. He nodded, tears brimming. As for Vanessa, she stayed distant, civil but restrained. She knew the terms of the will were unshakable. And with Lily in the house, her leverage had vanished, but I wasn't concerned about her anymore. For the first time in months, I didn't wake up bracing for the next argument. I opened my eyes to the smell of coffee, the sound of Lily humming down the hall, and the soft peace of knowing I had protected my home. I had protected myself. On the anniversary of our Henry's passing, I visited his grave alone. I brought fresh daisies, his favorite, and a folded copy of his letter, now slightly worn at the corners from the number of times I'd read it. You were right, I whispered, laying the flowers at the stone. I didn't break, I bent, but I didn't break. As I walked back to the car, yes, still driving, thank you very much, I felt something I hadn't in a long while, peace. Not permission, not acceptance from others, just peace from within. That evening, Lily and I ate dinner on the back patio. The sky was lavender, the cicadas humming. She was telling me about a campus event she planned to attend, then paused. Do you ever regret not selling the house? She asked. I smiled, not even for a second. She grinned. Good, because I love it here. Then she added with a twinkle in her eye, and it drives mom crazy. I laughed a full, hearty, unapologetic laugh. Vanessa may try again someday. Life has a way of testing boundaries, but I've found my voice. I've claimed my space. And I've learned that sometimes the quietest resistance is also the strongest. I am Lorraine Whitmore, and I'm still standing.